If you've been scrolling through endless projector options, watching endless comparison videos, and still feel that knot of uncertainty in the back of your mind, you're not alone. Most people end up stuck between the fear of overspending on a feature they'll never use and the dread of buying a unit that can't keep up with a home theater night or a boardroom presentation. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In this review, I'm going to walk through why the Sony VPL PHZ50 might finally tip the scales toward a confident yes, or why you might want to keep looking. First off, let's talk about the environment where you'll actually use a projector like this. I've spent a few evenings setting up a 12-foot screen in my living room, a couple of mornings connecting to a conference room table, and even a weekend test projecting onto a plain white wall in a garage while the kids were doing a DIY movie night. In every scenario, the biggest pain points are usually three things: brightness enough to fight ambient light, flexibility in where you can place the unit, and how the picture looks after you've stretched, zoomed, or shifted it to fit the space. The PHZ50 tackles each of those with a laser light source that pushes out around 5,000 lumens, a lens shift range that can move the image up to 55% vertically, and a built-in image scaler that claims to keep the picture sharp even when you're feeding in a lower resolution source. Now, who should actually consider this machine? If you are a home theater enthusiast who already has a dedicated media room, or a small to medium business that needs a reliable presentation tool that can be installed permanently on the ceiling, the PHZ50 fits nicely. The laser light source means you won't be swapping lamps every couple of years, and the 35% horizontal and up to 55% vertical lens shift lets you mount it high and still land the image squarely on the screen without a bunch of keystone correction. That's a huge convenience when you're trying to keep the cabling tidy and the projector out of sight. For anyone who runs a weekly conference, the quick startup time and the fact that laser light stays consistent over the life of the unit reduces the hassle of dealing with dimming bulbs mid-meeting. On the flip side, if you're just looking for a weekend-only projector for occasional movie nights on a couch, the PHZ50 may be overkill. The price point reflects its professional-grade components, and you'll be paying for the laser longevity and the lens shift mechanics that most casual users never truly need. Also, the unit does not come with a built-in speaker, so you'll still have to budget for an external audio solution if you want a full home theater experience. And while the projector does a solid job handling 1080p content, it's not a native 4K machine. The internal scaler will upconvert, but you won't get the same crispness as a true 4K projector. If you're hoping to future-proof your setup for the next generation of streaming content, that's something to keep in mind. Let's dive into the practical strengths that become evident after you actually turn the thing on. The first thing I noticed was the brightness consistency. Even with a couple of windows letting in daylight, the picture stayed vivid without needing to crank the volume on the projector's internal lamp. The laser source also produces a very pure white that doesn't veer toward a yellowish tint, which is something I've seen with older lamp-based units. The color gradation feature, Sony calls it call gradation capabilities, really shines when you're watching something with subtle shading, like a nature documentary. The transitions between dark and light tones feel natural, not banded, and that makes a big difference when you're trying to enjoy a cinematic experience at home. The lens shift flexibility is another practical win. In my living room, the ceiling height is only about 7 feet, and the screen sits 3 feet off the floor. With a traditional projector, you'd have to tilt the unit and end up with a trapezoidal image that needs digital keystone correction, which inevitably softens the picture. The PHZ50's vertical shift let me mount it straight on the ceiling, slide the image down to the screen, and keep the projection geometry perfect. In the conference room I tested, the same ability allowed me to install the projector above a drop ceiling without having to worry about a messy alignment process. The result was a clean, rectangular image that filled the screen edge to edge. Now, onto the weaknesses that become apparent after a few uses. The biggest practical downside is the size and weight. At over 20 pounds, it's not something you can casually lift and move from room to room without a bit of effort. That makes it less ideal for anyone who wants a portable, throw-it-in-the-back-of-the-car solution for on-the-go presentations. Also, Because the unit relies heavily on its laser light source for brightness, you'll notice a slight warm-up period of about a minute before it hits full output. It's not a huge delay, but if